founders of purist projects are inspiring, and the principles they espouse are admirable. DeFi describes the capabilities of the next generation of crypto after Bitcoin. I started making this video about a project to implement a completely anonymous and private blockchain for decentralized finance, which means it would run smart contracts. At first, I was very excited that someone was taking on this space, but as I read through their material, I couldn't decide whether these guys are on the ball or whether they're on another planet. I actually lost sleep trying to decide first what to think and then what to tell you. So in this video, I'll first tell you why I won't tell you what this project is, and then I'll go into why the area of privacy in crypto deserves much more attention than it gets, and then go into what the challenges are, including some secrets of zero knowledge proofs that you won't see in the marketing materials. And finally, my optimistic prediction about what will happen in the future. I have decided not to mention the project by name because it seems to be politically aligned with an ideology that reads like a communist handbook. Even though communism arose out of an outrage against injustice, which is a noble motive, communism's methods of taking brutal collective action against groups of so-called oppressors and putting evil people in positions of power to enforce these actions have accumulated the largest body count of innocent souls out of any ideology or religion. So I cannot, in good conscience, give this privacy project a recommendation. Instead, in this video, I'll tell you a story about the importance of digital freedom and privacy, which are both being eroded in today's cryptosphere, with only a few exceptions in narrow pockets of purist projects like zcash, Grin, and Monero. But these three do not have decentralized finance or smart contract functionality. DeFi describes the capabilities of the next generation of crypto after Bitcoin. DeFi is more mind-blowing than Bitcoin in the same way that YouTube is more mind-blowing than early websites. And this was an actual website of Pizza Hut in the 90s. I remember this myself. And Bitcoin really does feel like a 90s website sometimes, in that Bitcoin and Zcash and Monero and Grin, in these technologies, you can only do one thing: transfer coins to someone. While in DeFi, you can define and trade new tokens and trade them on decentralized exchanges, or borrow one token against collateral in another token, and all this while only interacting with unstoppable, decentralized software that answers to no authority other than the code that it is written in. DeFi came into being on Ethereum smart contracts back in 2016 and other blockchains later, but they have all been transparent. If you would like to read a little bit more about DeFi before my video comes, this is a good paper by the Bank of International Settlements, where some of their geeks and residents have analyzed this space and given a good summary. Some of these research papers by the traditional financial industry can be extremely thorough and quite accurate. Back to the topic. First things first. Most people like me have a loose relationship with purist technology projects. The founders of purist projects are inspiring, and the principles they espouse are admirable, but joining them in their quest sometimes feels like a bit too much of a sacrifice of convenience, for lack of a better word. I don't mean just a bit too much of a sacrifice. These guys are true masochists. Take, for example, Richard M. Stallman, or RMS, the founder of the Free Software Foundation, or the FSF. The FSF believes that software should be free. Free as in freedom, not free as in beer. This means that users of software should be free to inspect and modify the software that they run. This is sometimes referred to as open source, but open source is a more generic umbrella term that includes software that you can inspect, but you may not ultimately modify. And so free software that meets the FSF's criteria for software freedom is in a league of its own. As you might expect, Richard Stallman is an anti-copyright extremist. He campaigns against software patents and copy protection. Copy protection is also called sometimes DRM, or digital rights management, which actually means digital restrictions management, since its goal is to restrict what you can do with digital media. Back to RMS. He runs only free software and refuses to use a mobile phone, saying that it's a tracking device, which it is. So what does he do for tracking on the web with cookies and trackers? Well, he claims that he does not browse the web directly and has pages emailed to him via a service called Get URL from Email. That is a free software as well, and contained in a repository called GNU Womb. Now, I looked up this GNU Womb library, and I couldn't find anything in there except a programming language called Brainfuck. Brainfuck uses the smallest number of instructions possible to put together a Turing-complete language. Here is what the program Hello World looks like in Brainfuck. Clearly, the choice of name here is on point, even though there seems to be quite a bit of material online about the language Brainfuck, which is supposed to be where this tool that RMS is supposed to be using. I have not found the Get URL from Email tool that RMS claims to have used, and I have doubts on whether RMS still uses it. Suffice it to say that to most people, the mere proposition of using such tools seems beyond quirky, and it would be hard to take someone who claims they use these tools seriously. And yet, consider that the radically free, as in freedom, GNU project, which Stallman founded in 1984, forms the foundation of today's most popular operating system, Linux. And Linux is at the core of the most popular mobile operating system, Android, that is installed in some of the most desirable as well as some of the most affordable smartphones in the world. If you're still not convinced that this is important because maybe you're not an Android user, consider that when you browse the web, most servers you access will also be running Linux and other GNU software. That's a respectable achievement. But what about privacy, which could be argued is a prerequisite for freedom? And Richard Stallman doesn't want to get tracked because he worries about his privacy. So encryption would help him. Well, digital privacy requires encryption, and encryption used to only be available to the military. In the 70s, two privacy advocates and cryptographers, Whit Diffie and Martin Hellman, challenged the US military and proposed that everyone should have access to military-grade encryption. They argued that if the public did not have access to strong encryption, nothing the public could do in the digital space could ever be secure. In fact, they predicted that weak encryption, which the government thought would be sufficient for the public, would soon be easily breakable by anyone at all. And they were correct. The only encryption that works these days is strong encryption. Diffie and Hellman are more than just privacy advocates. They are actually cryptographers that designed part of the encryption protocol that you use on the web every day today as part of the HTTPS standard. And it's at the core of why you don't worry about typing in your credit card details online. Back in the 90s, when the web was still young, typing in your credit card details on a website was a bad idea. Even though encryption was available, it had not yet been implemented on websites. In fact, HTTPS, the web encryption standard, was only invented in 1994 and wasn't made ubiquitous until very recently, in 2018, when Chrome and Mozilla, two very popular web browsers, were modified to start requiring that all websites be encrypted with HTTPS. Why? Web industry giants decided that encryption of web traffic was so important that their products should not treat unencrypted traffic as normal. They made encryption normal. So today, all your web browsing is encrypted with military-grade encryption that is unbreakable by both governments and criminals. In both the case of GNU and the case of strong encryption, you are benefiting today from the work and sacrifices of freedom and privacy advocates who have worked to give you these benefits for decades before the standards they fought for were adopted as normal. I have to mention here that the fact that your web traffic is encrypted does not mean that your browsing cannot be monitored. Your browsing history still resides in cookies on the websites that you visit and in domain name service lookup logs, and these records can be obtained by law enforcement, for example, in justified cases. Today's crypto networks, on the other hand, are not encrypted even though they are cryptographically secured against modification. Much like anyone in the early internet could eavesdrop on any web browsing session, today anyone with the know-how can eavesdrop on your crypto transactions. Even though it seems that someone should be working on privacy crypto, there are actually very few privacy-focused crypto projects out there. I'll go over the reasons that privacy is not being too widely pursued in a moment, but first I'll give you a little outline of the technology and tell you some things that most people in crypto don't know about them. The best known crypto privacy projects are Monero, which uses ring signatures where funds are visible but are mixed, zcash, which uses zero-knowledge proofs to hide transactions and the addresses, and grin, which uses homomorphic encryption to hide transaction amounts. Unfortunately, none of these projects offer smart contract functionality, which is why private smart contracts would be a big deal. You might point out that there are smart contract projects out there that offer zero-knowledge proofs, like Starknet or Polygon zk-EVM. Aren't these privacy projects? Well, the first project to use zero-knowledge was Zcash. And Zcash used zero-knowledge for privacy. This is when everybody heard about zero-knowledge proofs and they became famous about the fact that they're good for privacy. But zero-knowledge can also be used for scalability. And this is what the other projects are doing. Now, you might ask, if I can use zero-knowledge for privacy and I can use it for scalability, couldn't you just combine the two and get both benefits in one? Well, the surprising thing that most people in crypto don't know is that today the technology to combine zero-knowledge scalability and privacy does not exist. And what's more, it might actually be mathematically impossible to combine zero-knowledge privacy with zero-knowledge capability. If you know something about this that I don't, please comment below and I'll do my best to respond and research your answer. So since most people in the space care more about scalability than they do about privacy, most of the time, if you hear about zero knowledge in the crypto space, it's for cramming more transactions into each block and not to make them more private. There's one more interesting thing about zero knowledge that most people don't know. And it may be the reason why smart contracts haven't yet been implemented in projects like Zcash. If you've ever run a zero-knowledge protocol, you might have noticed that there's something strange about running this. The chain processing goes fine, the node runs fine, the software is smooth, but generating a transaction is a very slow process and makes your PC's fans spin up for a good few seconds. Most people don't realize that the biggest challenge to making zero-knowledge proofs work is to have enough compute to generate the transactions themselves. This problem applies to both scaling and to privacy applications, by the way. If you don't believe me, you can check out a bit more about zero-knowledge proofs in a video from A16Z Crypto. I've posted a link in the description. Now, what about Monero and Grin? They don't use zero-knowledge. Could they do smart contracts? Well, it seems that the technology has not been designed to do smart contracts, or at least they haven't revealed that to us. So that seems to also be a dead end. If you know of such a project, excluding the one whose name I won't mention, please tell me in the comments below. I am very curious to find out. If you got this far in the video and are finding this content useful, please hit the subscribe button. On this channel, I explore projects that interest me in crypto, and I promise you that I'll continue posting insights that will be hard to find anywhere else. Okay, so there are some technological challenges with private DeFi, but aren't there smart people in this space that could solve those problems or come up with better tech? Maybe, but there's another problem. Last year, the authors of Tornado Cash, a privacy protocol for Ethereum transfers, were charged with aiding criminals in laundering $1 billion worth of money just because they wrote software that the criminals used. One of the developers was arrested and remains under arrest to this day. Think about it. Would it be fair to charge Richard Stallman or Whit Diffie or Martin Hellman because I'm almost certain that their software was used by the same criminals? Well, the crypto privacy developers were charged. So the Tornado Cash case has basically frozen progress in the privacy space for crypto. In the meantime, we must be patient as the Tornado Cash case and others like it play out, and quirky privacy and freedom advocates who make sacrifices of convenience in their own lives, at least, work hard to bring about the normalization of privacy in crypto. However this saga plays out, there's one prediction I will make, and that is that privacy-enabled cryptocurrencies will be the norm a couple of decades from now, when it is clear that nothing less is acceptable as a standard available to the public. And even though some law enforcement officials will complain, it will not be the end of the world for justice, because just as with web traffic, the authorities will also have options to trace financial flows, albeit with more effort and due process. If you liked this video, give me a like and a follow. I try crypto projects and tell you whether they're interesting to the casual user. I do not go into classic explainers with theory about how things work, which can get quite tedious. Instead, I focus on stories, tangible consequences, limitations, and usability, which, in my opinion, are the greatest indicators of future success.